Hey, it's Steve again, Neffmusic.com. I'm just going to add to my lessons on basically, it was a talk on where do you start on my site. I did 4 parts, putting them up on YouTube, and I realized it'd be good to just do one last part and talk about the order of events, the order of lessons, or the progress, because sometimes people ask me that. So, like I talked about in the earlier talk on where do I start, usually what I do with people is I'll have them start. I'm going to start at the very beginning as if it was a fourth grader, okay? Someone just starting the sax. It could be an adult student, just someone's very new to the sax. I start them with an easy method book, like a beginner method book. It doesn't even matter which one so much, but it's maybe 6 months or to a year, depending on if it's a fourth grader or adult or that kind of thing. Just going through the basics of the saxophone, learning the basics, learning how to play, how to blow, learning the notes, embouchure, tonguing, support, air, all that stuff. Going through all that. Then in year 2, I kind of go to another, maybe the second level of the lesson book, because that's important. Reading music, learning how to read music is important. So we do that, and then I introduce them to that basic jazz conception by Lenny Niehaus. I don't know if I'm saying that right. We do that to learn jazz phrasing and tonguing, making sure you're tonguing on the offbeats and that you have a smooth legato jazz. You're making your jazz lines like smooth, even though you're tonguing and accenting different parts. We do that, and then I usually have students do their major scales, work on their major scales. Now, again, some students will only be able to do one major scale a week. Some students will be able to do all 12 in 1 week. I had a 5th grader once. I was used to maybe one scale a week or 2, sometimes 3 if I was lucky. I had one 5th grader once that did all 12 in 1 week. And not only did he learn them all, he came back and he was like, he had them down, playing every scale. I was impressed. I'm like, okay, that's good. So I do that and get that foundation down, okay, the major scales. After the major scales, then we have a choice, okay? Usually, it depends on the student. Sometimes I have students that really do well with theory and the analytical and the book learning and all that, and a lot of those students do great when we start moving to major triads, doing major triads around the circle of fifths, minor triads around the circle of fifths, major 7th chords, minor 7th chords, dominant 7th chords, all around the circle of fifths. And then sometimes I'll throw in chromatically, like they'll do C, and then I'll say go up chromatically, C, C sharp, D, E flat, E going up, and then go down, stuff like that. But for the most part, it's around the circle of fifths. And at that time, usually I give a tune a week, usually a standard. So it's usually a simpler standard, maybe ones like that you can play one blues scale over the whole thing, sugar, and tunes like that, where it's not a lot of key change, but they can start playing by ear, and I introduce them to the blues scale. Now I said the analytical kind of the people that do well with the theory, I go down that path. Every once in a while, I run into students that don't do well with that. They can't learn their chords, their scales, the theory part of it. They struggle with that. And sometimes with those students, I branch off to the blues scale instead. Instead of dealing with chords and all that stuff, I say, okay, we did the major scales. You got those down. Now let's start working with blues scales. So we do a tune a week, and they learn one blues scale a week. They get the blues scale down, and they're improvising. They're improvising using that blues scale. I show them how to use it, how to resolve it, how to sound good with it. maybe work through my Mastering the Blues Scale books and getting some of those licks down. So I do that with them, and then on the side I sort of throw in the triads here and there, not to overwhelm them, because I have had students that the theory just boggles their mind, and they're like, but they're passionate and they do great with the blues scale. So and I just give you those two options, and both are important. So we're starting to deal with the chords or on the circle of fifths and the blues scales, getting those down. And I try to do all 12. And on my blog, I have a list of kind of funky songs that a lot of the younger generation like more than jazz, that I'll give them, that list, and they'll get them off iTunes with their parents' permission, and work on those. And again, this applies to adults too. But I'm just it helps me to think year after year with younger students, just to give you the order. So getting the blues scales down, getting those chords down. After that, we start working with a 2-5-1 progression and talking about that progression. So I start doing that. So you're taking the chord knowledge and now you're applying it to a progression, 2-5-1. And just maybe 1 or 2 keys a week, depending on how they do with it. And a lot of times at that time, we would have started working on a blues too, a 12-bar blues, B-flat blues. And I said we usually do 1 tune a week. So when we do the tune, it's usually, learn the head. I'll give them a recording to get, to listen to the head and listen to what the sax player does. And then they try to learn the head